Hello everyone, welcome to Say It in Poznań, Language, Identity and Everyday Life for International Students in Poznań, a podcast where we explore how international students experience language, identity and everyday life here in the city. My name is Marta and through personal stories shared by my interlocutors, I will try to understand how language shapes belonging, confidence and the process of becoming at home far from home. This podcast was created to give space to voices that are often present in our classrooms, on our streets, and in our universities, but are not always heard. Moving to a new country to study means more than learning new academic content. It means navigating everyday situations in another language, negotiating your identity, and finally finding your place in a new social and also cultural environment. In each episode, you will hear the story of one international student living in Poznań. We talk about first encounters with the Polish language, moments of misunderstanding and frustration, but also about small breakthroughs, growing confidence, and the strategies people develop to communicate and connect. Say It in Poznań is not about perfect language or fluent Polish. It's about real communication, real emotions, and real experiences. It's about the awkward moments, the silence, the courage to speak, and the feeling when a foreign city slowly starts to feel like home. Whether you are an international student yourself, someone planning to move to Poland, or simply you are interested in language and migration, this podcast invites you to listen, reflect, and recognize how deeply language shapes our everyday lives. So, let's begin. Today, I'm joined by Lisa, a student of applied linguistics who has lived in Poznań for a year now. In our conversation, you'll hear about her very first encounters with Polish, the moments of stress and humor that come with learning a new language, and also the gradual process of finding comfort and ultimately a sense of home in a new environment. Hello, could you introduce yourself to the podcast and tell us what are you studying and how long have you lived in Poznań?
Hello, my name is Lisa. I study applied linguistics in Poznań. Um, I've been living here since the beginning of my studies, so for a year now.
Even though a year might sound short, it's often enough for a whole collection of language experiences to emerge. The amusing ones, the difficult ones, and also the ones that teach you something about yourself. In this podcast, we explore exactly that. How everyday communication shapes the early stages of living in a new cultural and also linguistic environment. So let's go back to the very start of your journey. In your first days here, when everything was still new, what was your first encounter with the language, Polish or English, like after arriving in Poznań? Do you remember any particular situations that maybe stood out to you?
My first encounter with Polish was basically immediately when I came here because I needed a taxi driver. And that was the moment that I understood that I do not understand Polish at all. But I didn't need really to speak to him. So the next day, when I came to get my phone number, uh, no one spoke no English at this place. So I basically communicated with them through the translator, and also the woman who was talking to me, she called her mom because she spoke Russian. And that was the way that we communicated. Sadly, I was scammed at this place, but yeah, it was my first encounter.
That's such a vivid start to your life in Poland. What strikes me is how multilingual that first experience already was. So, switching between Polish you didn't understand, English that wasn't available in that situation, and also Russian as the unexpected bridge. So, these early encounters often show how unpredictable communication can be when you enter a new linguistic space. And the fact that your first real interaction involved being taken advantage of, that's, to be honest, emotionally heavy. Many students describe how these early moments become symbolic. They reveal how vulnerable you can feel when you don't yet have access to the local language. And at the same time, your story shows remarkable resilience. So you still managed to navigate the situation creatively, drawing on every resource you had. Listening to this story, it's clear that language was present right from the first moment, and not always in an easy way. Those early encounters often come with a lot of emotions. What emotions did you experience during the first weeks of communicating in a new language?
It was really hard for me because I didn't expect to live in Poland, and I decided to move here to study only half a year before. So I didn't have much time to prepare myself for it, and I quickly understood that uh, my knowledge is not that good, but um, I really had a lot of anxiety at the first times that I needed to order something or something like that, but this time it was much easier, and when I was spending time with people who spoke Polish, I began to understand more and more.
Thank you very much for sharing that and for describing the emotional side so openly. Many international students talk about this mix of excitement and also anxiety, especially when the move happens quickly and there isn't much time to prepare linguistically or mentally. Your description of feeling anxious, even about something as simple as ordering food, is actually very common. So, linguistic insecurity often appears strongest in small everyday tasks because they don't give you time to plan or think. And yet, as you mentioned, spending time with Polish speakers slowly changed that. It shows beautifully how language learning isn't just about classes or textbooks. It's a social process. Understanding grows out of shared moments, laughter, and simply being around the rhythm of the language and also the city. Over time, those emotions often start to shift. Anxiety slowly turns into familiarity, and the city begins to feel different. Can you describe a moment when you felt at home in Poznań and what helped you feel that way?
I think the first moment I felt at home here was when I went for a quick vacation in Gdańsk. And when I was coming home back to my apartment, I felt for a really long time that I was coming home. I felt like this apartment was also like really familiar to me, and also when I grew to know some people here, it was also the moment that I realized that I really enjoyed here and I really feel comfortable and like at home.
I love that moment. Many people say that your first notice a place feels like home only when you leave it temporarily. So, that feeling of coming back, recognizing your street, your room, and your routine is often an emotional turning point. Your description also shows how relationships shape belonging. So, feeling at home rarely comes from language alone, it grows from the people who make your surroundings feel warm and familiar. Yet language is still part of it. Even recognizing signs or overhearing conversations can create a sense of connection. That transition from being a visitor to being someone who returns somewhere is incredibly meaningful. Even when a place starts to feel familiar, language challenges don't simply disappear, they just change form. Have you ever experienced situations where the language barrier made something important more difficult, for example, at the university, in an office, or in a social life? And how did you deal with it?
I would say it still feels a bit complicated to speak in a friendly way with people, especially because I went to some classes recently which are only in Polish, and I feel a bit um, strange because I just start filtering it out at some point, but also the moment that I needed to find an apartment for myself, I also met that many people require you to speak like fluent Polish to rent out an apartment. So it was a bit hard at that point, but I prepared myself a lot for it with like AI, and I could just make them think that I speak fluent Polish.
That's a really insightful description of how language barriers appear not only in high stakes official situations, but also in everyday social contexts, especially the friendly ones where people expect being spontaneous. Many students describe this. Speaking formally is often easier than joining casual conversation. The story about classes entirely in Polish is also significant. Cognitive overload, so the moment when the brain simply stops processing the input, is a real and common phenomenon. And the apartment search, that's a huge challenge in itself. I'm impressed by how you use technology as a support tool. Preparing conversations in advance, even rehearsing them, is an extremely intelligent strategy, and it shows how multilingual communication today is not only just between people, but also between people and digital tools. Dealing with these situations often means developing your own ways of coping and communicating. What strategies help you communicate when you don't understand your conversation partner or can't find the right word in a foreign language?
I have this problem a lot with Polish, but I try to prepare myself as much as I can beforehand. So I just use the translator and I find the right words, but when I cannot in the moment remember them, I either just try to use translators then or kind of explain it with different words.
These strategies show a lot of language awareness. Preparation, even simple vocabulary lists before a task, can make an enormous difference. And paraphrasing is such an important skill. It allows you to keep the conversation alive even when you don't have the exact word. What you describe also reflects something we see in research on multilingualism. So, communication isn't about perfection, it's about resourcefulness, using whatever linguistic tools are available in that moment. Your approach demonstrates not only just coping, but also active agency in communication. When you listen to all of this together, the first encounters, the stress, the strategies, it really sounds like a process of change. How have your language experiences in Poznań changed you as a person? So, your confidence, sense of belonging, or maybe the way you see yourself?
Uh, I think when I came here, I was really scared to speak in other languages and I didn't feel at all comfortable with it. But with the time, I feel a lot more confident and I understood that even if I make mistakes, it helps me to improve my language and speak better next time. And I also learned that embarrassment is okay sometimes and you shouldn't be scared of it because, uh, well, you need to survive at the first point and you need to complete things. So even if you're not good at speaking the language, but if people still understand you, it's sometimes okay.
That's such a powerful reflection. Your story captures a change many students describe, moving from fear to confidence, from trying to avoid mistakes to recognizing them as a part of the process. In language learning research, this shift is often described as developing a new language identity. It's not just about grammar or vocabulary, it's about how you see yourself in communicative situations. You show that beautifully. The acceptance of imperfection, the courage to speak even when it feels scary, and also the growing belief that communication is possible even without full fluency. So, that mindset transforms not only how you speak, but also how you move through the world. Before we finish, I'd like to ask you one last thing. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who has just arrived in Poznań and is afraid of speaking a foreign language, what would it be?
So, as for advice, I would say that you shouldn't be scared of embarrassments and being embarrassed because it's okay. It's what makes you proficient in the language, and even when I made the worst mistakes in the language, Polish people are usually really nice about it, and they always say that I speak really good Polish. So you just should try. There are lots of really nice people out there. So, and for the place, which I would recommend, because it's the place that really made me feel included in the first months when I came here, because there is a lot of foreigners. There is a cafe place, Tentno. There is also really good coffee and matcha here, so I would just really recommend it.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on. The idea that embarrassment isn't something to avoid, but something that actually helps us grow. What she said really captures an important truth. Language learning isn't about sounding perfect or never making mistakes. It's about having the courage to speak even when you're unsure and trusting that communication is a shared effort, that someone on the other side will meet you halfway. Your advice reminds us that progress often happens in those uncomfortable moments when we take a risk and speak anyway. And the fact that people responded with kindness and encouragement shows how powerful those small interactions can be in building confidence. I also really love that you mentioned a specific place in the city. Recommending a cafe isn't just a practical tip, it shows how belonging is often built in small, everyday spaces where language, people, and routines slowly come together. Places like that can make a new city feel less foreign and remind us that feeling included doesn't always come from big milestones, but also from simple moments of connection. Lisa, thank you very much for sharing your story. It's a wonderful example of how language, even with all its challenges, becomes a space for growth, confidence, and connection. For anyone listening who is just starting their journey in Poznań, I hope this conversation reassures you that uncertainty and mistakes are a natural part of the process. Feeling lost, awkward, or unsure in a new language doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're learning and adapting. Every small interaction matters. Ordering coffee, asking for directions, joining a conversation, even struggling to find the right words. Each of these moments is already a step toward feeling more confident, more connected, and eventually more at home. With time, the unfamiliar becomes familiar, and the city slowly stops feeling like a place you're visiting and start feeling like a place you belong to. This was Say It in Poznań. Thank you for listening and see you in the next episode.